So two major cases challenging rifle bans and magazine bans are in front of the Supreme Court, and these cases are currently not alone. Multiple other rifle and magazine ban challenges have lined up for the same exact conference, but now they've been relisted once again. So let's break down what is happening in these critical rifle and magazine ban cases and what this whole carousel of relists actually might mean. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe. Also, you can click the like button. That just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content. And I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to self-defense protection, in my opinion, AOR is in a league of their own. They're backed by an actual law firm, the Attorneys for Freedom, and they're always trying to expand upon their benefits and give you as much as possible as a member. They've added a bunch of new benefits like 4 guaranteed attorneys for your self-defense case, and then also they have the hero clause that they just added in. So if you're interested, if you want to check them out, you can check them out using the links down below. And if you sign up using my code ARMSCHOLAR, you can get $25 off of your sign-up fee. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you will know that the Supreme Court has been avoiding rifle and magazine ban cases for many years, but the core question that they need to address is very simple. Does the Second Amendment protect common semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s and also standard capacity magazines? Now on this topic, lower courts are deeply divided. Some say that these are protected arms. Others say that they are too militaristic in nature, that they're too useful in military service, and therefore they can be banned. And some say that they can still be banned even if they're determined to be protected arms. And that confusion is exactly what these cases are asking for the Supreme Court to clarify and to finally fix. Well, now multiple rifle and magazine ban cases went to the Supreme Court at the same conference once again last week. And today on the Supreme Court's order list, the cases were not denied, but once again, they were instead relisted for another conference that's going to happen at the end of this week on Friday, March 6th. So we need to talk about what is happening right now in these cases and what this constant relist might actually signal. Now, the first key case that we need to talk about is the case Vermontes versus Cook County. That is the case which challenges Cook County's ban on so-called assault weapons, which includes things like AR-15s and dozens of other commonly owned rifles. The plaintiffs argue that these rifles are in common use for lawful purposes and therefore protected under the Second Amendment and Supreme Court precedent like Heller and Bruin. They are asking for the Supreme Court to finally say once and for all that states cannot ban an entire class of commonly owned items. The second key case is Duncan versus Bonta, and that is the case that deals with California's magazine ban. This is the case that was previously granted, vacated, and remanded by the Supreme Court after they issued their Bruin ruling. It's now back in front of the Supreme Court once again because the lower courts, the Ninth Circuit, continues to uphold magazine bans despite what Bruin said in that analysis. Now, here's what's happened in these cases, which is important. Both the Vermontes and Duncan case and the other rifle and magazine ban cases that went to the same conference have been relisted once again instead of being denied today on the order list. That means that the Supreme Court justices may be still actively discussing behind closed doors what they want to do with these cases. And recently the court relisted them to go to the same conference along with multiple other rifle bans. And again, that's going to happen this Friday, March 6th. Now, with these cases, that means that there is a group of rifle and magazine ban challenges from different states and circuit courts that are being considered at the same time. Now, that also creates something that we have not really seen a lot, which is multiple cases on the same constitutional question landing together in front of the Supreme Court dealing with different jurisdictions in different circuit courts. Now, this may be exactly what many of the justices have been suggesting that they've been waiting for. Instead of taking one isolated case from one state or one court, the Supreme Court can look at multiple bans, multiple circuit courts, multiple conflicting rulings, and they can kind of do that all at once. That allows the court to resolve the issue nationally instead of kind of doing it piecemeal. It also avoids the whole criticism with some of these cases where you had the United States government or the states argue that, these are the wrong vehicle because they're procedural issues. With multiple cases being lumped together, it could help to cure that issue. Now, this is currently shaping up as a coordinated moment where the court can finally answer, are AR-15s protected arms? Are magazine bans unconstitutional? And can states, cities, and localities just outright ban these firearms? However, like I mentioned, these cases have once again been relisted on today's order list. They were not denied review, they were not granted, but instead they're going to go to another conference this Friday on March 6th. That means that the Duncan magazine ban case has now been relisted 8 times, and the Vermontes rifle ban case has been relisted 7 times. Now, here is why relists are so important and not just random and what this could indicate for these cases going forward. Now, historically, cases that are relisted at least once have a much higher chance of being granted review, but cases that are relisted many times can go either way. And oftentimes, multiple relists could indicate that a denial is coming, but maybe there is a justice or maybe a couple who want to write a dissent on that denial. We've seen that also develop before in other cases like the Snope case. But sometimes it means potentially that the court is trying to line up cases together or maybe coordinate a grant or just stall the cases until a different one makes its way to them. That makes this moment so important and why we need to keep an eye on this. It may not be just about the Vermontes or Duncan case. It may be about grouping all of these rifle and magazine ban cases together, trying to push them to a future date, or also maybe waiting for a different case to eventually make its way to the Supreme Court. Also, multiple relists does not always mean a denial is coming. Keep in mind that a lot of the big 2A cases like Bruin, Cargill, and Caetano were cases that were relisted, I believe, like 10 plus times before they were actually granted review by the Supreme Court. But we've also seen on the other side, a lot of 2A cases that were relisted, 10 plus times, 7 plus times, and then were eventually denied review, and then we simply just got something like a dissent. So here's where this currently leaves us. We now have the Vermontes and Duncan case once again being relisted for conference this Friday. Again, that's 7 or 8 times that these cases have now been relisted. And again, we're going to have to keep our eye on what happens next week. This again creates the perfect storm of cases, all focused on the same constitutional question. And if the court grants even one of them or several of these cases, we may finally get a definitive ruling on rifle bans and magazine bans nationwide. And after years of delay, this could be the moment that the court can no longer avoid and finally have to address this issue. Also, keep in mind that when the Snope case was denied, you had a statement from Justice Kavanaugh where he said that they would have to address this whole rifle ban issue in a term or two. Well, now it's the next term, and we're going to see if they actually are going to fulfill that promise. So now we'll be watching for the order once again next week after this Friday. There are a lot of options. The best case scenario is that all of these cases are granted review. All of the rifle and magazine ban cases are kind of lumped together and considered at once. I guess another opportunity would be just simply 1 or 2 of these are granted, maybe a rifle ban and a magazine ban, deal with both of those. But the worst case scenario is that all of these cases are going to be denied. Eventually they're denied on an order list, and maybe we just get something like a denial or maybe just nothing at all. Really, if they got denied and then we got no word at all from the Supreme Court, that would be the worst case scenario. If that happens, it would show that the Supreme Court is still unwilling to review this issue and they're not really concerned about fulfilling that promise that they would address this issue in a term or two. So there are a lot of options that the court is, potentially looking at. There are a lot of things that could play out with this. They could also just be simply trying to delay this, push it out to later in this term, and just try to push it out later to next term as well. Or, a bad thing that they could also be doing is just dragging this along, pushing it to the end of the term, and then they're just going to just deny all of these cases, maybe at a cleanup conference at the end of this term. So this is something that we're going to have to watch closely now that all these relists have kind of gained in high numbers. They've been relisted multiple times, and this starts to indicate maybe there is no interest in this by the Supreme Court, and they're just simply going to deny these cases. So that's where things currently stand right now in the critical rifle and magazine ban cases that are in front of the Supreme Court. As soon as we hear more from the Supreme Court, as we get information on the next order list, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm and just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this type of 2A content, and so it shares it to more people. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support, and never forget this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.